Welcome to the Unity Guides Expert Interview Series. My name is Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. And the reason I started this interview series is that I've met some pretty amazing people in recent years, and the conversations we've had have been valuable to me. So I thought I should share them with other people to add value to them as well. And today's guest is Rachel Libowitz. Rachel is an EOS implementer in New York. And welcome, Rachel.
Clayton, thank you so much for having me. I love seeing people like you helping entrepreneurial companies, because you know what? It's not only the EOS implementers that will help those companies. It takes a village, right?
Absolutely. So today's topic is the VI duo, and you have some really interesting ideas around codependency, and also have written a book called The Empowered COO. It's not out yet, right? But it's getting close. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Hopefully the next one.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to writing the book and your ideas to start off?
Yeah, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And I always say the most interesting part was watching how employees acted when the boss was around versus when my parents were not around, right? Yep. And everyone laughs when I say it, because we all know we act differently. And that's when I said I want to learn more about business behavioral science. Through my journey, dropped out of college, went for business behavioral science, and my husband and I acquired this business called Polycraft, where we print on flexible packaging. Bought the business in 2015. My husband, being very talented, grew the business very fast, but by 2018 we felt like the wheels were falling off the bus. And as any good Jewish mom would do, I complained to anybody that would listen that my husband was never home. And that's when a friend told me about the EOS operating system, and she gave me the book Traction. I read the book and I said, I want to do this. But you can't be a dentist on your own teeth, right? So we hired an implementer to implement EOS for us in our system. It grew, our business grew tremendously. We got the right people in the right seats. I got my husband home more. And one day he walked in, he's like, you should do this. This is everything you ever wanted to do. This is like behavioral science. So I became an EOS implementer about 2 years ago. Working with my entrepreneurial leadership teams, right, with the visionaries and entrepreneurs, I saw all these similarities between visionaries and integrators, which in my previous life, I was a codependency coach. I helped spouses of addicts in recovery empower themselves to be able to stick up for themselves, have boundaries, and become not enablers of whatever the dysfunction was that's going on. So I saw all these similarities, and it suddenly clicked and made sense. So here is what the discovery is. The discovery is that visionaries that are driven and entrepreneurial, based on the data that we know, and Dr. Doug Brackman in his book Driven talks a lot about it, and right now I am the co-host with him on his podcast, is that driven entrepreneurs live in what we call the narcissistic fantasy. And that is that they are very goal-oriented. They are very driven towards a goal. When they see people in their path that look like obstacles to their goal, they're going to mow them down, right?
Yep.
I call this visionaries are self-focused. And this idea is called relationship math. This comes from Ross Rosenberg, who is a psychologist, and he wrote the book, The Human Magnetic Syndrome. That talks about any relationship. So addict and spouse, two people in a marriage, a child and a parent, any two people, there's like an accountability chart. And the accountability chart is that one person will oftentimes be self-focused, and the other person will be other focused. That's like alpha and beta in a relationship. And the same exists in the visionary integrator relationship. And in a regular, healthy, visionary, integrated relationship, the visionary should be the alpha, right? What does alpha mean? That means that they're self-focused, which means they're goal-focused, and they're building a whole business based on their goal.
Hmm.
Elon Musk is building huge empires based on whose vision? His own vision, right? Then we enlist an integrator to enable that vision, to bring that vision into reality. What happens is this is a perfect recipe for codependency to develop because it's a perfect recipe for an integrator to lose their sense of self, forget themselves, forget their priorities, focus on the minutia because they end up pleasing a visionary versus serving the greater vision. And that was a long introduction.
Really interesting introduction, though. I've read Driven, and I'll put the books in the notes afterwards for anybody who's interested. Um, so, what is I've also worked with people that have addictions as well. I used to be a pastor, and was involved with a program called Celebrate Recovery, and it's challenging, right? Not to not to enable, to challenge, but support. So, how does this play out? Like, I guess, how does it played out in your own relationships? Just curious.
Clayton, Clayton, I have a question for you. You worked with people in recovery. Do you see similarities between visionaries and the people that you work with?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Right?
I started
Yeah.
laughing when you were explaining it because I've 16 years working with visionaries. I'm on my eighth that I've personally worked with in the integrator seat. Yeah, I see it. I see it a lot, and I think the first visionary I worked with, I was very much a pleaser, right, and just kind of went along, more of a yes
Yeah.
person. Which was not very good for my mental health.
And how does it affect the company when you're the yes person?
It's not good. I don't know. It's personal growth. I believe personal growth in the visionary and integrator are extremely important. And if you're just a yes person, you don't create an environment where personal growth happens for the visionary, right?
Right.
Because
And the company doesn't move forward that fast. Like you're slowing down growth.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm when I first talked to you, I instantly started reflecting on the first couple of visionaries that I work with. The first one, I was the yes person, and nearing the end, I was there 7 years, but nearing the end, I started to challenge and push back a little bit, which he did not like very much. My second visionary, I was like, okay, I'm going to be more upfront, more direct. I'm going to, challenge more. I'm going to share my perspective because it's needed and it's valuable. And over the years, I've become much more blunt and direct with my
Right.
visionaries, and it's had positive impacts if they're open
Well,
to that, right?
I call it assertiveness.
Mhm.
So we could go there. We're going to go there in a minute. So
Yeah.
here is what it is. Visionaries have addictive personalities, and that is what Dr. Doug Brackman talks about, the D2, D4
Mhm.
gene. And it's a genetic mutation of the dopamine receptors in their brains not receiving the message that they have enough dopamine. So they're
Mhm.
always looking for more, for that high. And that high gets created in chaos. Chaos gives you a high, right?
Mhm.
Rescuing, saving, reaching goals. So they're goal oriented. They need that chaos in order to get that high. Now, there is a spectrum of how self-focused you are and how other focused. So we didn't talk about the other side. Other
Mhm.
focused people are people that believe that their mission in the world is to help others, that they have a need to be needed. Their greatest fear in life is not being appreciated and needed. They are always going to find ways to feel valuable. They arrive to a party, it's like, what could I help? Can I unpack? Can I serve? Can I help you? The person that's more self-focused is like, what do I need? I need a drink right now, right?
Mhm.
So this is the difference of the two people. And by putting them into that visionary integrated relationship, we are like shining a spotlight on this. What happens is an addict is the highest level of self-focusedness, because being in active addiction is the most selfish thing you can do. You're
Hmm.
thinking about placating your feelings, which is
Hmm.
usually underlying all of that is shame, right? So you're drugging yourself with alcohol, whatever it is, to soothe yourself. That
Hmm.
is the most self-focused thing you can do. Now, there is an addiction that we celebrate, and that is goals and work and hustle culture. So we
Hmm.
need to see that through that lens, and that visionaries that are extremely driven soothe themselves with being problem solvers and creating chaos, right? They will attract integrators that soothe themselves with feeling needed and coming alive when they can save people. So I want to read the list of what codependency looks like in an integrator seat.
Yeah, please.
A general like overview. It's overextending yourself and being resentful, avoiding discussions about real issues. So you don't want to talk about a real issue because you want to be looking nice and you don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. You don't want to feel uncomfortable. Cleaning up other people's messes. So like you're always coming in and saving, making excuses for poor behavior of others, tending to others' needs and neglecting your own. So you're going to see a lot of integrators building resentment because they are serving others and forgetting themselves, doing things for people instead of helping them do things for themselves.
Mm,
So this is the difference. A real good integrator is like somebody that teaches you how to fish instead of giving you a
right.
fish a day. I say a real good integrator is like a triage nurse. You come in, you assess the situation, and then you delegate. Okay, surgery, this, that. They don't actually do much. They're very good at assessing and distributing. You're
Yeah.
laughing, but am I wrong?
I'm laughing because sometimes you know, that's what it feels like. It's like I don't actually do the work, right? I'm just making sure the work gets done, and to put it in terms of how to be a great boss. I'm not taking the monkey, right?
Exactly.
I'm not taking your problem. I'm helping you solve your problem, but you're going to solve it, and I'm going to guide you, right? I'm
Exactly.
going to ask you questions and stuff like that. That's interesting. Is there more?
Yeah. Yeah, there's more. Describing other people's problems as if it's your own.
Yeah.
So the higher level of codependency, the more drama and victim there is, or over controlling. Because what happens is this is like being an integrator is the perfect opportunity to become chief control officer. Like I'm controlling everything. Everything is on my plate. I have to make sure the trains are running on time. But
Hmm.
really, the only thing you can control are the controllables, and that's really you and your
Hmm.
response and the way you delegate. And when we forget that about ourselves and we start trying to control people, because I know what's best for you. So what happens is there's this tape that goes into the integrator's head where I know what's best for you. So I'm going to tell you what to do, especially the visionary. You're crazy. You're a visionary. I'm going to tell you what to do. So then that respect goes down for the visionary, and it's not an even level playing field. Whereas respecting the visionary for their crazy and saying, this is what makes you amazing. This is the
Hmm.
gift that you bring. And the gift that an integrator brings is the sense of intuition and the sense of discernment, being logical, being able to take these ideas and map them out and say, this is why this is not going to work. And this is why this will work, using
Hmm.
data, using facts, using, so understanding that instead of creating drama. Uh, Having difficulty not being the rescuer in a relationship. So oftentimes integrators, even in their home life, will suddenly see that they are the rescuer for their parents, for their kids, for their spouses. So they end up being rescuers, troubleshooting problems for others before thinking of your own problems. Again, always putting others first, fixing other people's problems, even when they didn't ask for help. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
And then creating an environment where people are overly relying on the integrator. A successful business, an integrator should be able to take a vacation on a week for a week. and everybody should be okay with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
A business where everything relies on the integrator is unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the description of the highest level of codependency. In integrators, I created an assessment that you could take. It's on my website. My website is www.empoweredcoo.com/assessment. And that will tell you how empowered are you from a scale -1 to -5, because the integrator is on the negative side of the spectrum, the visionaries on the positive, and that's what creates that magnetic syndrome, that rocket fuel that we talk about.
Mm-hmm. So what's the -5, +5? What's the ideal?
So the idea is, these marriages where everybody, the whole community knows that they kill each other, but they're not divorcing.
Yeah.
Why? Because both are equally crazy. One is on the +5 side, and one is on the -5 side. That is called the human magnet syndrome. That's where it works. It's like they click. They can't get away from each other. So I will oftentimes see that the higher the visionary is, the higher codependent the integrator is. Now, what happens is, in order to break that, the integrator has to come down the scale. Then you're in a challenge where either the visionary comes down the scale, they become more what I call center and situation focused,
Right.
and they have a happy, healthy marriage. Sometimes integrator gets healthy and then they have to leave or move on because the visionary is not changing. And we see this oftentimes happening with integrators. We know that the average lifespan of an integrator is about 2.5 to 5 years. And maybe it shouldn't be longer than that, but it should be definitely more quality, right? In those 2.5 to 5 years, you should be able to create higher impact and have a greater, better results. We took a survey between the implementers, how we feel our clients are doing, and only 20% of VI duos actually feel that we have traction, that there is that rocket fuel where, visionary integrated relationships are super healthy and there is trust like a marriage, and both are feeling like they're getting the most out of their relationship. An integrator job is to make a visionary be able to get the 4 freedoms that Dan Sullivan talks about, right? Freedom of
Mm-hmm.
time, money, purpose, and relationships. So most visionaries don't feel like the integrators are giving them that. And I think a lot of it is rooted in codependency, because integrator is trying to stay nice to the leadership team and the visionary. They're caught in the middle, they get resentful, they slow down in productivity because they start focusing on unnecessary details because it's a safe place to be,
Mm-hmm.
hiding in the corner, right? So I'm just going to make sure that the bows are tied in all the boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of confronting the hard conversations. So what a healthy integrator looks like is somewhere between -1 and -2 on the spectrum, because you're still other focused. That's your DNA. And realize the gift of that. The gift of that is that you're logical. You think of others. So when the visionary has unrealistic expectations about the leadership team, you're going to be the reminder. You're going to be like, hey, we're humans here. We can't work 60 hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring that gift of having natural empathy. If you're too high on the scale, you have sympathy and not empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathy, when you get stuck in people's problems, you don't
Mm-hmm.
stay the adult in the relationship. Empathy is being able to see people's emotions from where they stand. Visionaries usually have low empathy because they're so self-focused. A healthy visionary is about a 1 and a 2 because they still know that they are the visionary in the relationship, but they are open to hearing other people's opinions. A healthy visionary speaks last. They don't need to speak all the time. They don't need to talk a lot. They are very good at listening. They're very good at hearing other people's opinions. And then they still check in with their intuition of what the greater good of the company is. They honor people for who they are. They don't need everybody to be just like them. I
Mm-hmm.
think that visionaries, when they start out the EOS journey, they're like, oh, I want 50 of me in this business. Well, guess what? There can only be one crazy visionary per business. And I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again. When visionaries hire people like them, it's colossal, right?
Yeah, it just creates more chaos. I've called it the 2 or 3 headed dragon monster before, right? Like it's ugly, but that is a tendency to hire people just like us if we're not
Because
healthy.
we believe we're the best.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. That's interesting. So is it like I'm sure people who are watching this are going to be like, man, what do I do? Right? Like I could feel it with my first visionary was, that I was processing, I was healing, I was becoming more healthy. And as time went by, I was like, I don't want to be here
Yeah.
anymore. That's pretty common, I'm guessing.
That's that coming down the scale from
Yeah,
-5 to 1, right?
yeah,
Um, fractional integrators are a thing now, right?
yeah.
One day I sat down, I said, what's the difference between a fractional integrator and a full-time integrator? Do you know
Hmm.
what the difference is?
No.
Every regular integrator would have what a fractional integrator has. The world would be so much in a better place, but you might be out of a job. And that is integrators, and what I talk about in my book is integrators need to develop what I call ADD, and not the visionary kind of ADD. It's assertiveness, decisiveness, and discernment. So a fractional integrator is very assertive. They know, they're like, hey, this is the rules of the engagement. This is how we're in. And if you do not follow, we're out. So they set the rules of the engagement. Imagine every integrator came and set their own rules of engagement. I'm going to work with you if you respect my time, show up for same page meetings.
Hmm.
Like, this is the conditions of the engagement. That puts you in so much more of an assertive, powerful place. You have what it takes to be that person that holds that whole business together. Decisive is knowing what you want, having boundaries. Most people think of boundaries as an ugly thing. It is not, because it is the container where everything gets to grow. If you
Hmm.
don't know your boundaries, and boundaries is time, energy, intellect, I find that weak integrators have people taking up too much of their time. Leadership teams taking too much of their time, people below, they're not good at prioritizing who gets what information. They sometimes overshare things that they
Hmm.
shouldn't, right? So being decisive in the way you talk to a visionary. Visionaries don't want like roundabouts. They don't want big introductions. They're like, give me the meat. You
Yeah.
need to get really good at bullet point lists, bringing bottom line, also learning how to speak visionary. That is remembering that a visionary's number one goal is freedom and winning. They became an entrepreneur because they felt they could do something better and they didn't want to be told what to do. Suddenly their business grows and they have to hire an integrator, and suddenly they're finding somebody telling them what to do. They feel so trapped. So
Hmm.
I want to teach integrators how to directly communicate with visionaries. Visionaries shouldn't feel trapped. If you tell a visionary you must show up at this meeting, I can guarantee you the visionary won't show up. But if you show them the win of how much they will gain by showing up to this meeting, how amazing is it, right? And the visionary has buy-in, and the visionary is like, oh my gosh, we could do so much more,
I
right?
need to be at this meeting, right? We're going to change the
Exactly.
world. And I think
Exactly.
that's almost, you almost have to develop some visionary in you, right? Like you have to cast vision to the visionary why things are important, right? It's not speaking their language. Is that right?
I don't know if you have to become more visionary. It's simple tools. It's
Yeah,
literally,
yeah, I guess.
I am laying out about 15 tools in my book
Yeah.
using Chris Voss no-oriented question, right? Every visionary feels trapped when they have to say yes. Yes is
Hmm.
conforming. You're telling me what to do. Saying no feels very empowering. If I tell you, would it be a bad idea for you to show up? No, it would not be a bad idea. And they show up.
This is the finesse.
Right.
The
The,
finesse.
showing them the win, giving them freedom, honoring their identity. talking in their language is super important. So that's decisiveness.
Yeah.
Once you have assertiveness and decisiveness, you can hone in on your sense of discernment, your intuition. Integrators' intuition gets blurry when they don't trust themselves, when they don't honor themselves, if they don't know their needs, if they are pleasing versus serving, if they don't know how to separate truths, facts, and feelings. I talk a lot to integrators about that. They will tell me a story of something that happened, somebody that stormed out of the office. And then it's like, okay, what's the facts? What actually happened? What's the truth? And then what's your feelings about it? Because sometimes because we're other focused people, we work very much with our feelings. Intuition is feelings, but if you don't know how to, you know, sit in an observer seat and not insert yourself into the mix, then that is very dysfunctional.
Hmm.
Separating facts from truth is, let's say, COVID, right? COVID, whatever happened was a fact. Masks, if it worked, felt like the truth in 2020. It doesn't feel like the truth anymore today. So
Hmm.
it's that is being able to separate the facts from the truths and the feelings. And that is being discerning.
That's interesting. Um, so what advice do you have for, let's say a vision or an integrator who's, moved to, like, let's say a 3, and their visionary is pretty entrenched in a 5? What advice do you have?
My advice would be to move them to 2 and a 1, because a 2 and a 1 would be creating boundaries.
Yeah.
And a boundary would look like, I want to hear what you're saying. I will hear it when you're calmer. Right now, I can't listen to this. It's not, you must calm down. That person
Yeah.
has a right to be as angry as he wants. But
Mhm.
I am setting the boundary that I'm only going to work with you when this and this happens. So the visionary has the choice of either shaping up or shipping out. I think one of the things that I work with integrators in doing is helping them define their empowerment statement. It's their unique ability. If you know your power, you're not scared of losing your job, moving on, because you're so powerful. You can make magic in a different company, right?
Mhm.
Moving down that scale is discovering your magic and then
Mhm.
using that as your business.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. And I would say, there's plenty of opportunities out there. There's no shortage of visionaries looking for integrators. And
Absolutely.
I would even explain that a different way, that doing what's best for the company requires this, right?
Yes.
Like, it requires us to stand our ground, and to push back, and to challenge the visionary to grow in areas that are holding back the company. And it, like you said, you need to be strong in your belief that you are valuable. And I wasn't my first visionary. My second one, I was much more so. But then I think later, once I, started doing a little bit more fractional work, and I really got rooted that, what, I can have a big impact here, and if someone is not willing to play in a way that works for the company, I'm not playing.
Right. That's on them. You can't. Part of healing from codependency is really realizing you can't fix people. You
No.
could bring the camel to the water, can't make them drink. And when you give up that control, when you let go, you create space, you create a vacuum, and the universe answers, and you create space for either better opportunities to come into your life or for your visionary
Mhm.
to have that wake up call, right? There's one thing that's very important to mention is that somewhere on the path of recovery, people become they can seem as obnoxious or very strong because they're trying to be assertive. And I dedicated a long chapter in my book in talking about the 4 different types of communication, because I think this is where people often fall short, is understanding the difference between passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive communication. A
Mhm.
lot integrators fall in the passive aggressive lane, and when they start healing they turn aggressive, it's very important to understand that aggressive is still a form of control and it's still codependent. The difference between passive aggressive and assertive is, passive is saying, I have no needs, I'm not gonna, just not speaking up. Passive aggressive is saying, you have needs, I don't, but I'm resentful. So I'm going to show you in a backhanded way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an integrator sitting at the table and saying, well, I guess it's me that's going to do it. Well, I guess, I don't know. I'm not the boss. Like all these comments are passive aggressive, right? Being aggressive is saying, you have no needs, I have all the needs. A lot of visionaries end up being aggressive. That is
Mm-hmm.
more common on a self-focused scale. But when a integrator works on healing, they might end up looking aggressive because they're trying so hard to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you swing on the pendulum and then you come back. So that's normal. And then being assertive is using active listening, is saying, I hear your needs. I'm going to state my needs, and then we're going to do what's best for the situation. So acknowledging the other people's needs, using mirrors, labels, active listening, that is the highest level of being a very good integrator.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, right? It's not all like, but the relationship, like the emotional intelligence, the self-awareness, the just being healthy, uh, is so important. It's off the charts important, uh, as an integrator. And I would say, like, obviously it's important in other roles too, but the higher you move up in the company, the more important it is. Um, People ask me sometimes, how important is self-awareness and personal development? It's number one. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the world has only in the last, few years realized that entrepreneurs need emotional intelligence, right? We have YPO, EO, Genius Network, all that is built on emotional intelligence. Nobody is giving you there is so much information on business that you don't have to go to these masterminds to learn. I think we're only now starting to talk about how important emotional intelligence is for the integrator and for the rest of the team. This
Mm-hmm.
is only the beginning of that revolution. The issue is that there aren't enough resources for integrators and places for integrators to congregate and gain that emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is the disruption that you and I are working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad I discovered what you're up to, because it's powerful. I never made the connection between the codependency connection. I think I knew it, but I never like verbalized it, right? And your work is really adding another dimension to my understanding of all of this. So thank you so much. So if someone is interested, wants to learn more about you and what you do and the book and all of that, how do they reach out to you?
They can find at www.empoweredcoo.com. Find me on LinkedIn. You can email me, Rachel at my leaders resource. That's a little bit complicated, the email. But if you go on my website, there is a contact me button. There's a free assessment. There's a free boundary worksheet that I highly recommend, that I spent a lot of time and energy to make. So, and I'd love to hear your feedback.
It's great. On behalf of our viewers, thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. And thank you for sharing your passion on this topic. I'm sure it's going to add value and have an impact on the people that watch it. If today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with experts in the world of business.